So today's distance and midpoint formulas. Now, you've done both of these. Okay, I know for a fact you did because I had all of you in geometry. Okay, so it's more of a refresher than anything. Okay, we'll do a couple extra things with it. Now, with the distance formula, and let's say I have my xy axis here. Okay, so we're kind of going away from what we're used to talking about now. Okay, let's say this is x1, comma y1. B over here is x2, comma y2. And C is up here at x3, comma y3. I'm trying to find the distance. Well, I guess they did it backwards, or different than I did. They put C here, and I'm going to keep it the same as the book has it, and B here. Okay. And this is, we're going about distance formula here. We're trying to find the distance from A to B. Now, one way that you could do this is you would know the distance here, right? How could you find that? You could just count it because it's perfectly horizontal, right? And you could just count this because it's perfectly vertical. Okay? And once I have, and that would make a right triangle, correct? Once I have two sides of a right triangle, how do I find the third? Anybody remember? Yeah, Pythagorean theorem. Okay? So, if this happened to be 3 units and this happened to be 5 units, you could do 3 squared plus 5 squared equaled c squared, right? Which is 9 plus 25, so 36 equals c squared, which gives me c equals 6.
Wow. I probably should.
Okay? That's one way to do it. Now, the other way to do this is to use our distance formula. Okay? But the thing about distance formula is, so this would have been that side squared, right? Pythagorean theorem. So it'd be AC squared plus BC squared equals AB squared, right? Is everybody with me? That's just Pythagorean theorem. Okay? Can I get AB by itself? By doing what? Square rooting it. Okay, so I square root it. Now I have the square root of AC squared plus BC squared equals AB. This is just your distance formula. Because how do I find the length of AC? AC is horizontal, right? So to find the length of it, I would subtract my x's to find my distance. So it would be x2 minus x1 squared plus, now to find the length of BC, I'd subtract my y's because it's vertical. So what is distance formula? Right, but it's just Pythagorean theorem, right? It's just Pythagorean theorem written in a different way. Okay, so that's what I want you to understand out of this. Okay, is that this is just Pythagorean theorem. It's just written in a different way. So no matter what, you're still using your Pythagorean theorem, but that would be your distance formula. Okay? So if you forgot distance formula, should you still be able to plug it in with Pythagorean theorem and find it? Yeah. Okay. In your book, in the green box, it has this as D for distance. Okay. So if I have 2 points, maybe they just give me 2 points here. I'm not going to do the same 2 that the book uses. Okay, but they give me 2, -4, and -5, -1. Should you be able to find the distance between those 2 points? How do I decide which is x2 and which is x1? It doesn't matter. So Kobe, which one do you want to be x2? 2. So I have 2 minus -5, which is actually +5, squared, plus -4 minus a -1, just +1, squared. 2 plus 5 is 7 squared, 49, plus -4 plus 1, squared. So I actually have the square root of 58. Now, what did we do here when I have a radical like this? Okay. A couple of them, they changed the decimals. Okay, I'd rather reduce the radical. We've done a lot of that. We should be able to do that. What do I try to take out? A perfect square. Are there any that I can take out of 58? Doesn't seem to be. Definitely not 25. Anybody find anything? I don't think there is. So you would just leave your answer just like that. Square root of 58. If you can break it down, I would like you to break it down. The next example, I'm not going to go through this next example, but let's talk about it real quick because you are going to have problems like this on your homework. It says classify a triangle using the distance formula. So we're trying to decide, is this triangle scalene, isosceles, or equilateral? What does it mean to be an equilateral triangle? All the sides are the same. What about isosceles? 2 of the sides are the same. What about scalene? None of the sides are the same. Okay, we're talking length when we say the same, right? Okay, so if I wanted to know what type of triangle it is, what would you have to do to figure that out? Yeah, you'd have to find the length of each side, right? So in this example that they give us, they found the length of AB, the length of BC, the length of AC, and how many were the same? 2. So what type of triangle was it? Isosceles. I'm not going to go through that because it's just doing distance formula 3 more times, and I think we can do that. Am I right? Can we plug in a distance formula? Okay. I'm not going to spend your time going through an example like that then if you can do that. Okay, the next formula we have on the next page is your midpoint formula. Now, midpoint means you're finding what? The middle point, right? How do you find the middle of 2 numbers? Which is doing what? The mean, which means the average, right? Same thing you're doing on midpoint formula. You're trying to find the middle. Okay, when you find the average, you find the middle. But you're finding the middle of how many points? 2. Okay, your midpoint formula is the average of your x's. So when you average, you have to add, right? An average of 2 things, you divide by 2. That's going to give you your x-coordinate. To get your y-coordinate, you need to find the average of your y's, which would be y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Okay, so what is your solution going to look like? Is it going to be just one number? No, it's going to be a point, an ordered pair, right? It's going to be x comma y. Okay, this is how you're going to come up with your x-coordinate. This is how you're going to come up with your y-coordinate. Okay, so if I gave you a segment, again, I'm trying to fly through this because I know you've already done it. Let's say I have a point at 6, -2, and 2, negative 9. It's supposed to be a straight segment. How can I find the midpoint or the middle point on that segment? Use the midpoint formula, right? Okay, so my midpoint is going to be the average of my x's, which is going to be 2 plus 6 over 2, comma, over 2. Now, a lot of you can probably do this step in your head, right? Which I'm okay with. You don't have to write it out if you don't need to. 2 plus 6 is over 2, comma, negative 11 over 2. Okay? So, your point, which should be right up in here somewhere, is going to be 4, negative 11 halves. Which is like negative 5.5, right? Okay. Again, if you have those formulas available to you, it shouldn't be too challenging for you. Alright, the last example I want to look at is probably the most challenging one. It's not over challenging, but it's more challenging. Okay, they want us to write an equation for the perpendicular bisector of the line segment joining negative 2, 1 and 1, 4. Okay, we're trying to write the equation for the perpendicular bisector. Okay. What's important about being perpendicular and bisecting? Okay. You need the opposite reciprocal slope. That's going to take care of the perpendicular part, right? Okay, and the bisector means it's going where? Right through the middle. Okay? So, if it's going to go right through the middle, I'm going to have to find what? Midpoint. So let's do that first. For my x's, I'm going to do negative 2 plus 1, which is negative 1 over 2. So there's my x. For my y's, I'm going to do 1 plus 4, which is over 2. Okay? So here's my midpoint. Now I'm trying to find the line perpendicular. And Derek told me that that was opposite reciprocal slope, but I don't know the slope. Okay, at this point, they're assuming that you know how to find the slope of something. It's rise over run. Rise is going to be my y's, right? So what's the equation going to look like? Close. I'm going to say it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, again, it doesn't matter which one's your 2's and 1's. But my slope is going to be, I'm going to go 4 minus 1 over 1 minus negative 2. 4 minus 1 is over, which is, so, is that the slope I'm going to use though? No, what slope am I going to use? The opposite reciprocal, which in this case just happens to be negative 1. Okay, remember opposite reciprocal, you need to change the sign and flip the fraction. Okay, so I want to use this slope and I want to use this point, right? Now we got to figure out what's the equation of a line look like. Another thing that they expect you to know at this point. Okay, y equals mx plus b. Okay, I know there's a lot of stuff going on here on the board. I have my slope, I have my point, and I want to put it into this, right? Okay, so I'm going to take those three things. Let's scoot them down here so we can know exactly what we're working with. Because the rest of it doesn't really matter anymore. So I have those, and I have this. I have to try to come up with an equation of a line. Okay. Well, I know this is what? That's my M. So I can plug that in. Okay. Do I know my B? What's B? That's my y-intercept. What are these two things, though? That's an x and that's a y. Okay. So where does the negative 1/2 go? Where does the 5/2 go? And then I'm going to have plus b. Now, when I write the equation of a line, it usually looks something like this, right? So I have, in the end, I'm going to have an m and a b plugged in, right? So once I find my b, do I need this anymore? No. So now what do I do? Well, negative 1 times negative 1/2 is positive 1/2 plus b. Subtract a 1/2. 5/2 minus a half is 4/2, which is 2. Again, there's a lot of stuff going on in these problems. So I have my slope. I have my y-intercept. Is that enough to write the equation of a line? Yes. So the equation of my line is y equals negative x, or negative 1x, whatever you want to put, plus 2. Okay. Again, a lot of stuff going on there. Just understand why you need those. If you get to those problems in class today, let me know if you have questions. If not, we are going to add on to this tomorrow. So if you have questions on those while you're at home, you can ask those tomorrow. Okay. Any specific questions before I give you guys your assignment for today? No. Let me confirm that before I actually tell you that, but no. You will not. You have to find the distance between 2 points and the midpoint. You have to classify a triangle as scalene, isosceles, equilateral. You'll have to write the equation for a perpendicular bisector. And you'll just have to use a distance formula to solve for a variable, which we didn't do. So again, if you get to that, let me know, or I can touch on that tomorrow. I want to see if you guys can get that on your own. See if you can figure out what you need to do. Okay, it's going to seem like quite a few problems, and it kind of is, but we are going to have all day tomorrow to work on this and just a few extra problems. I'm not going to tell you. You can get it off plan book, or you can come up and look, I guess. I'm not going to tell the whole class.